welcome to yet another episode of the Startup Catalyst. Today's episode, I have a special guest, Debasis. Debasis is the founder of DARIAAN and Namak Art Enterprises, two unique initiatives in the startup world. I'll let Debasis complete the introduction. Welcome, Debasis.
Thank you so much. Delighted to be here, Hetal. A little introduction about myself. Typically, I started my journey about 27 years back, being a standard, completing studies, getting into a job. But something happened around 2010, and when the entrepreneurship bug bit, and we started doing something which was treading into unexplored zones. And the first startup which I co-founded was in the D2C space. In the landscape of 2010, when there was hardly any internet penetration, there was hardly any online payment, credit cards penetration was hardly anything. And the largest logistic provider, support provider was Blue Dart at that point of time. Out of 1 lakh pin codes, I think Blue Dart was covering some 5,000 odd pin codes. So that was the landscape. We were trying to sell kids' clothing to mothers, which was hardly 2% of the space. Today, mothers and women comprise of close to about 80-85% of the fashion space. So a little early in the game, but a lot of learning. Exited 2014, went back to a job for a small period of time, thinking what to do. That's when Namak sort of came up as a thought process of helping stay-at-home women to generate an alternate form of income. Few interesting success stories came up. Somebody wanting to build a brand, we used to incubate them, starting from ideation to design to small quantity manufacturing to helping them going online. At the same time, helping other women who are doing some other products, helping them with their offline foray and taking them to multiple retail stores and as well as my retail store. Come 2019, I scaled that operation down. But while I was doing all this, a lot of technology startups started coming as an interesting proposition of understanding what the customer wants. They already have probably built something, and they are unable to scale or sell, or probably either they are too early for the market or they are late and competition has already caught on. So that's where my journey with mentorship started. I did not understand technology much, but I did understand the very strong use cases which the technology brings. So I firmly believe on either side of technology is a user and the developer. Both are human beings. So we really cannot take away that factor of building any product. And I've been trading on that for the last 8 years. Have seen fairly good success stories in keeping that one thing live in building a startup and a product.
Right. No, that's fantastic. And what I really feel glad to see with you coming on board as a mentor is not just the depth of expertise, 27 years is a lot, but the breadth, right? The kind of domains that you have dabbled in. I think the incubators and the startups will find a lot of utility in engaging with you at different stages in their journey. And since you've been in the startup ecosystem for a long time, I'm sure you would have observed a lot of market trends. What can you call out as the major market trends that you observe at this point of time?
See, these things keep on changing. When I'm talking of 2010, 11, the landscape was very different. Today, the rate of change of landscape is changing. So I would try to answer that question in twofold.
Sure.
One is immediate forecasting, which between 2 to 4 years is what I see. I do see a very strong movement towards EV adoption, electric vehicle adoption, both in the, of course, two-wheeler, of course, is there. Then there is a three-wheeler and, of course, four-wheeler at a B2C stage. Along with that, a very strong infrastructure support getting built across highways, as we go deep inside India. the EV adoption is going to become more and more and more. It comes with its different challenges of battery technology, lithium, and all the rare earth material availability and all. But this is what I do see as a very strong this thing. Moving to the other side, I do see skilling becoming a very, very strong, immediate need. And companies or startups who are building something in the skilling space do have a huge, huge potential. They're already doing some amount of work, but that work has to start getting reflected more in the mainstream. I'm talking tier 2, tier 3, percolate down to as deep as possible. The third is digitization in the MSME space. 63 million MSMEs. Each of them have been resisting digitization so far. So a few startups are doing that. Very tough nut to crack, but that is where I see a huge opportunity. I think the biggest opportunities are coming bottoms up in India now. It is the rural tier 4, tier 3, tier 2, tier 1, and urban cities are getting sort of clogged and sort of saturated. And last but not the least, fintech has been in space, but fintech in new avatars are coming. I'm seeing a lot of different work happening in the insurance space, in the health insurance space. India's penetration of health insurance is only 7%. So you see the huge opportunity out there in terms of health insurance. One unforeseen health incident in a family wipes out the complete savings of a family. So it's a huge, huge opportunity for startups to look at. Beyond 4 to 5, so maybe a 10-year horizon, I do see climate tech taking mainstream space. It's still catching on. We are still, grappling with a lot of fundamental issues. How do you capture carbon footprint is still a point in question. How do you sort of incentivize carbon footprint management is also being discussed upon. So I do see that taking a little more time. While the European countries have taken that as mainstream, we will be there in the next 3 to 4 years. Deep tech with real use cases. While we are talking a lot about AI, Gemini, open AI, trying to bring in, but in real time, that will start showing results only if we start getting into the linguistic space or the real ground reality work. So I do see AI starting to show some real-time work in the next 5 to 7 years coming when people start talking more. I do see hardware tech becoming in India becoming very big. Very big, I would say, real mega. I mean, comparing, rubbing shoulders with China, because the Made in India initiative has just started about 7, 8 years back, 10 years back. It has still yet to get momentum, so that will be. Another thing which I do see as a very strong space is defense and space tech, indigenous defense and space tech. LCV was one thing, and we will be seeing a lot of more innovations coming, and we get to see all those new. So this is where I do see the entire ecosystem moving, and startups should start looking at these space very seriously.
Wow, that's quite a comprehensive list, Devashish, I should say. And I would strongly encourage you to write a big blog on this, because the number of spaces that you touched upon are pretty relevant and pretty interesting, starting with two-wheeler EV, skilling in general, digitization in the MSME space, fintech, climate, deep tech, hardware space. Space is again a very interesting space with recent wins by Agnikul and a few others. I think a lot of strips, and it's interesting that you were able to capture these trends, because startups are startup founders typically are very narrow focused. They like an idea and they just jump onto that idea regardless of the viability of that idea working in that space, and it's better for them to try and to catch on or latch on to a hot market where the uptick would be much faster and much easier, rather than struggling for a very long time, especially if you don't have a pedigree as an entrepreneur. You might not get too much support if your idea is still out of whack and very difficult to accept as well, right? What's been your personal journey, Devashish, into mentorship? If you could name a few startups, how did you end up thinking that you're a great fit from a mentor perspective?
See, as I mentioned earlier, one of the key value propositions or one of the key entry points which I did see, I felt missing was the tech world was, the startup world was primarily tech dominated. So anybody with tech skills or complementing tech skills would team up together. So two engineering students, one both from the computer science background probably, you know. So they would start working on supplementing skills, but both are good programmers. They all decided to build something and they built something, spent a very important 2 to 3, 4 years. Um, but when they go to the market with the product, the first thing is that they are horrendous storytellers. They just can't speak. They are amazing programmers, but I mean they're just the opposite when they have to sell their product. And that is where my journey came. That is where I started talking about, uh, you really need to package. You are building a business. Your company doesn't end at the product, and over a period of time, your product will start becoming just one small part of your business, and everything else will become big. So I did see a myopic approach to building a company. So most of the entrepreneurs were building product, not a company. And that's where I needed to bring that shift. And there are many companies like that where I mentored them. Specifically, for example, one company I recall was trying to do shared hotel space, for example, right? Uh, Through the entire presentation of 1 hour, they talked about how their technology is going to integrate with the ERP of the hotel. I did fantastic stuff. I just asked them one basic question is between one guest leaving and one guest coming, and you are typically creating a red bus model here.
Yeah.
How do you ensure that the hotel service is maintained, the room is cleaned? And they didn't have an answer to that. And believe me, that's a deal breaker for any business in that hospitality space, right?
Yeah.
Like that, missing details in the frenzy of building a fantastic tech,
Yeah.
real-time details becomes a very key factor. And that's where I start focusing on. I sort of break it down into micro activities or micro elements, which each of them start becoming important in building a product. So that's typically
Yeah.
my journey into mentorship has been.
Okay.
The other thing which I do see as a mentor is the underestimation of the potential of customers. They feel that the customer need is only one. And I keep on talking about that user spear model. You have one point, you have used that point to enter the startup, enter the company, but start spreading out further. Just see what added features can you give. Can you go deeper into that customer, and
Okay.
you will get more and more use cases which is allied to your product. So that's how the entire mentorship
Yeah.
journey started.
No, very, very interesting points. The first thing that you mentioned about build a company and not a product. And I think from a holistic growth perspective, many founders really falter there. Right? I know how to make a product. I make a product means I make a company, which is actually not true. I mean, where is the finance going to come from? Where is the sales and marketing skill going to come from? And they face it when they touch the market. They realize they don't have a story to tell. Right? Because they're not
Absolutely.
storytellers. They're a deep tech product. And the user spear model is very good one. I've spent 2 decades in enterprise, and the share of wallet used to be our mantra. Right? Am I creating or am I delivering more value to the same customer? Because my ability to deliver more value to an existing customer is far higher because I'm already entrenched into that account. I have the mind share of the customer, and it's all about asking for for 30 minutes more to make a presentation on an additional product. The customer knows this is a dependable vendor. This is a company which has already delivered value in some other stream. Now they're entering into the stream. Maybe we might have to discount it to start with, go for a free trial or whatever, but the acceptability can be very high. So very valid points that you brought up, Devashish. Another interesting point which I forgot to ask you earlier, your venture name Namak Art. Two questions. One is why the name Namak? I know it's salt in Hindi, and why women? What prompted you to start there?
So I think if you go back to where the identity of the present India started is actually with Dandi March. And Dandi March is all about creating salt. And that's how Namak came as a strong thought process. And why women? Multiple reasons. I think the key reason, and I will just give you one of them, is I think today's identity of India, and we have always been, we say we are a patriarchal society, but we have always worshipped women. Our so if we have to do something, and if we have to make the woman's independent and self-reliant, uh, if you have to make someone self-reliant between a man and a woman, I would choose the woman because she will not only bring in money home, she will also manage the home along with doing everything else.
Yeah.
So that's the way I thought about Namak, and it sort of did fairly well. I have one couple of very interesting models came up. Um, when we were doing Namak, one lady, without taking names, she is a techie and she wanted to build a brand of her own. And she had absolutely no idea. She had some design sense. She had no idea how the basic manufacturing process set up. So we set up a small incubation model for her where she bring in her ideas. There is a team of people working with her in building the product, helping her sell the product, and the rest of it. Today, she is a fairly known brand in the D2C space. There was another lady, she was a stay-at-home woman, troubled marriage. She wanted to do something of her own. And for her, money was not the key thing. She wanted her own identity. Today, she runs a business which is close to about 8 crores of turnover. It's a boutique which she did, and she did with very smart sourcing, and that's where we helped her. So every business came up with different challenges, and we worked with them and started to build them in many ways.
No, fantastic. I think the reference to Dandi March takes me back down memory lane, of course. And I totally agree with you. I think, women need that kind of a focus and attention. I would not use the word support, but they just need that focus and attention. And the moment they
Absolutely.
get the attention, they will grab the opportunity and convert it. And we at GRG Gen Next obviously have a special focus towards women entrepreneurs. We do believe that the society has not been fair to them in terms of the entrepreneurship opportunities, and appreciate the fact that what you're doing there. Some of the challenges that you identified were more from a understanding perspective, but what's been your observation in terms of these startups that you work with? What are the typical challenges that startups face nowadays where they need mentorship?
See, Hetal, I would say everybody comes with a different set of challenges, but the commonality, I would break it up in two parts. One is a early stage startup, and then there are growth stage startups. The early stage startups typically comes with a thought process of overestimating a market opportunity or the market capability. Okay, they come with what I call it as the Tam Sam Som syndrome. Uh, they will not understand or they will not go deep down to actually where will the product will sell. I'll give you an example. One company came to me which was actually offering loans for these small retailers, Pan Dukan and retail, this Mudi ke Dukan and all those corner kirana stores. Anything between 5 lakhs to 50 lakhs he was offering as a loan. So he was a mediator between probably I think an SBI and these people. So his job was to create a nice documentation project report, get that project report approved by the bank, and ensure that the loan gets sanctioned. So the business was amazing. It made money from creating documentation. It made money from the deployment of the funds also. Amazing. Two revenue streams, very good. What he started talking about, he came to me and he said, I want to capture Karnataka. I said, take a hold on. Just look around you. Within 10 square kilometers, you have got 1,000 of those people. And if you are to capture Bangalore, only Bangalore and dominate Bangalore, you will take 5 years to do that. Now, that's your SOM. Your SOM is not Karnataka at all. Your SOM is how many of those retailers are you capturing. So this underestimation and an overestimation of market capability versus my capability as a startup to capture that market is a very, very big problem today. That's one. Secondly, and this is a fundamental issue which I've seen is barking the wrong tree. They have come, solved the problem for a solution which is solvable, but probably the customer doesn't want it solved. For example,
Yeah.
if you're coming to me with a traffic solution, I will not look at you. India cannot handle a traffic solution problem yet. So there is no way, because it has got multiple complicated factors around it. So you need to find smarter ways of it. That is the early stage problem. The growth stage problem, which I've seen, is the startups realize that they need money too late in the game. So they come to me, sir, I need money, I need to grow, I need money in 3 months. Which investor is sitting, or which money tree am I sitting on? Is always my question. And why should they invest in you? So it's a long process of 9 to 12 months,
Yeah.
and you have to look forward, plan forward for that.
Yeah.
And without exploring, the first thing you do, your revenue is maybe 1 crore. You are looking for 5 crores of funding. Why should somebody fund a 1 crore, 5 crores for a 1 crore funding?
Yeah.
Is all these questions comes at a growth stage, and they keep on justifying everything what they have to say. They never look at it from the fundraise point of view.
Yeah.
So understanding a little bit around the fundraise becomes very, very important for startups.
Right. No, very, very valid points. I think the TAM, SAM, SOM situation is very real and very apparent. Sometimes just because someone has told them they draft the TAM, SAM, and SOM, but they're still keeping a TAM in mind, whereas actually what they should focus is on SOM, right? If you
Exactly.
don't capture the SOM, where is the question of capturing the TAM? But if you straight away run after TAM, you will exhaust your funding on day one and have nothing left on day two to service any of the rest of the facets of the business.
Exactly.
I think barking on the wrong tree is very true. A lot of people have that strong self-belief that, oh, I think the customer wants this solution. Did you ask the customer? No.
Exactly.
I mean, like, I appreciate your strong self-belief, but it has no value, right? And I think the funding element again, it strikes a right chord with me as well. Just because you want the fund doesn't mean that you get the funds, right? Regardless of how much passion you show, regardless of how much capability you show in your resume, if the investor doesn't have interest or doesn't agree with you, he's not going to even spend a minute with you. Forget about spending money, right? And that's when these founders really get the shock of their life. They're like, oh my God, how could this happen to me, right? And if this is known earlier, right, rather than getting to know in the growth stage, if they had that clarity in the early stages, they would not even make that mistake of raising funds when they know the market is not going to accept what they are doing, because they are covering a small silent ecosystem which nobody cares about, right? Yeah, you maybe are servicing an impertinent need around in your neighborhood, but if the value is not extending beyond the neighborhood, where is the question of going pan-India or global as well, right? When any specific success stories that you would like to share, any startups that you associated with and feel really proud about having mentored them or having had an impact in their life journey?
Yeah, quite a few of them. I would say there was a company called DegPeg. There is a company called DegPeg which is actually doing very well in the live commerce space. They started off way back in 2000, about 2.5 years back. The advantage I had with that company was I had a founder who had already had 2 exits. So for me, the struggle of convincing him was not there. The We used to actually speak more about how to scale this business, considering all the factors which we all both know. So that was one very interesting thing. The second thing is, second startup is the Hobby Tribe. Guy, the founder's name is Joshua. Young college kid, comes from a business family. Very enthusiastic, passionate, well-spoken. Uh, he's like he's like the flubber of flubber. Kept on jumping up and down. My main challenge there was to, tame him, to bring him to certain level,
Get him
uh,
grounded.
get him grounded. He really became like my student more than a mentor. It was like a teacher-student scenario.
Yeah.
So that was the second experience. They're doing very well now. They pivoted along the way. I put him into my other partner accelerator ecosystem in the US, helped them raise money. A lot of things happened in that. The third company is a Delhi-based company called Aristavolt, which is why I love this company. They were a part of Shark Tank. I think season 2 or 3, I don't remember. Um, they had a very interesting model. They were a perfect match between fashion and tech. So they were making traceable money wallet. Uh, and it sort of connects to your mobile, and if the wallet and the mobile is 10 meters apart, it gives you a ping. You can find your wallet through your mobile and vice versa. The CEO is a fashion designer, and the tech was outsourced, but I found that they were actually trying to build a business here because they're trying to build a brand. Tech was just an enabler in this case. So all these learnings um, is a very interesting, mix of startups which I keep on interacting on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
And so these are some of the success stories. I did have a failure story, couple of failure stories also, and so this was a fintech company which was trying to solve the problem of payments at a rural level,
Yeah.
without the need of internet and without the need of smartphones.
Wow.
Amazing problem to solve. Amazing. The TAM is crazy, 625,000 villages.
Yeah.
Anything can be done. They also got, I was once a judge at the Karnataka Elevate program, and they got selected. They raised money from there. I helped him raise money. But he came from a small town, Manipal. Um, Something went wrong along the way where he stopped listening to his people and started doing things on his own because he raised money, and funnily he became a celebrity in his village because he raised external money,
Yeah.
and he sort of started thinking way beyond his boots, and the money company ran down to ground.
Oh man.
So this is also a very strong thing. As mentors, we can only take the horse to the water. It's the horse which plays the
Yeah.
game.
Yeah. No, beautiful example. And what you mentioned about Hobby Tribe, 90% of the time, my mentoring involves telling the entrepreneur what not to do. What
Exactly.
needs to be done, they know. It's just that extra frill and सर मैं ये भी कर लूँ सर मैं ये भी कर लूँ भैया रुक जा you're not doing your core task and you're trying to go 4 or 5 tasks further ahead.
Exactly.
And really nice on your part to share the failure as well, because I think one failure teaches a lot more than what 10 successes will ever teach, right? And I think
Absolutely.
and the fact that you shared about it, being too early, not listening to the people around you, getting on a ride and then realizing that you're going in the wrong direction, it can actually lead to a lot of failures as well. The other point I had with regard to is innovation, right? How critical do you think innovation is for a startup entrepreneur? Can he survive on a cut copy paste model, or do you insist on something innovative or something unique being integral part of the startup story?
See, the cut copy paste model, if there is the last word is an adapt, it's okay. You still can cut, copy, paste, and adapt to the market you're trying to sell something.
Yeah, yeah,
And that has fairly worked in. And all the businesses which I see are big have actually cut, copy, pasted, failed, adapted, and then got success. So there is no, and if you are doing a cut, copy, paste, and then you're adapting, you're actually bringing innovation to actually bring that copy paste business model into work, into the present market scenario. But innovation has to be a basic DNA of any startup. Otherwise, even an accounting firm will be termed as a startup today, right? A legal firm will be termed as startup. So why are we having these words like legal tech or fintech? Is because finance is supposedly perceived as non-innovative and fintech is innovative. So innovation, startup or no startup, you really need to have it in some form or the other. And as little uh, you really cannot do without that part as a key driving force in your business. You constantly need to keep on innovating. You not constantly need to be proactive rather than reactive. You really constantly need to have a huge gauge of the market which is happening around you, the pulse around you. So these are the 3, 4 things has to be a very strong DNA of a startup.
Very interesting and very sound advice. Another source of wisdom can be books and media. My
Right.
favorite part of the question here, of the podcast is any books, movies, or even a web series if you would want to recommend, which startup founders should really look forward to watching or reading.
I am more of a fan of books. So I have got a list of 3 books which I
Awesome.
really propose the startups to read.
Okay.
One is a book called Zero to One. It's by Peter Thiel.
Peter Thiel. Yeah.
Yeah, and that all talks about how you sort of focus on innovation, what is the importance of a first mover advantage, and rest of it. I would suggest that the startup should read that.
Yeah.
So that would give them an idea as to how the startup world should be.
Yeah.
Then I love this book, 21 Lessons for the 21st Century by Yuval Noah Harari.
Yeah.
He's a Israeli philosopher and historian. And it's amazing at what he talks about how the future of work is going to be, how globally we will be more cooperated than competition,
Yeah.
considering that we are talking about some Nostradamus guy suggesting a third world war.
Yeah.
But he is saying that the world will be more cooperated than competed.
Yeah.
So, and also, how do we build more everlasting stories? I mean, it's the stories which has brought our civilization forward. So it's more of a overview of civilization and how things are moving.
Yeah.
And the last and the most important thing, once you choose entrepreneurship, you're probably in your toughest part of your life, of
No
your
doubt.
journey.
Yeah.
So my question to them to read the book called The Psychology of Money
Morgan
by
Housel.
Morgan Housel is to understand how you manage your personal finances. 99%, and even I have been a victim of it, that
Yeah.
my home EMIs have forced me to abandon my startup and get it back to a job. 99% of the cases it happens.
Yeah.
And how do you manage your money? How do you manage your family expectations? How do you manage your investments? How do you manage your children's college fees, school fees, while pursuing your passion of a startup?
Yeah.
I think this book should be there. So these are the 3 books.
Yeah.
Typically, I suggest to everybody understand the startup ecosystem, understand the globe, and understand your personal finances because you need to last till your startup takes care of you.
Yeah. No, fabulous books. I think Zero to One is more like a Bible for entrepreneurship. I mean, I've known
Absolutely.
Zero to One's association with entrepreneurship as long as I know the word entrepreneurship. 21 lessons for 21st century. A lot of people get opinionated about the author Harari based on Sapiens, and they miss out
Right.
on a gem of this, what this book has to offer. And Psychology of Money. I mean, I can't. I'm lots of words as far as the praise of the book is concerned. And yes, I think personal finance trumps over startup finance, right? If your house is not in order, you can't create a startup and expect to make money out of it, right? That becomes
Absolutely.
like a most essential thing to start with. No, fantastic stuff, and it's been awesome asking you questions. I will flip the mic around, and what's the question you have for me?
So, Ethel, one question which I ask for you is I do see a very strong growth in the manufacturing sector in India slowly,
Yeah.
but most of the technology is imported or adopted technology. How do you see this progressing forward? Do we continue to make on behalf of a Boeing or an Airbus, and we feel proud about it, or an Alstom making our metros? When do we have our own engineers and scientists coming forward doing this?
No, fantastic question. And I think there are two key aspects which need to be accounted for when we talk about India growing as a manufacturing destination, maybe just not catching up with China, but exceeding that, right? One
Right.
is talent, the other is discipline, right? And talent slash innovation, I would say. I think your talent to innovate and make your own products, right? Where do we stand on that, right? How capable are we? I mean, the IT service industry has gone through it. They've tried a lot to innovate, make their own IPs, move from a services business to a product business, and all of them have failed. right? I mean, Infosys tried to make a mark in some banking products, TCS tried to do its bit, but end of the day, they remain a services-oriented company. I think that's a great example of where you try a level best, but if your focus is still towards the dhanda, which is the services, you will gravitate invariably towards what's the need for the investors to feel happy about and for my stock market to perform well versus what my nation wants from me, right? So for you, for India to succeed in manufacturing, getting the focus back on innovative, on-ground, domestic products has to be the key, and that's one area. Second is with regard to discipline, right? We don't have a meritocracy, we don't have a communist government, we can't pick up a danda and make people work, but there is certain discipline which has to be ingrained, which has to come from a culture perspective, and honestly I can share it on a live podcast. We don't have enough discipline to be able to become a manufacturing powerhouse. In selective parts, some companies outshine because maybe the strong leadership and the level of control that the leadership has can actually demonstrate some difference. But bulk of them, especially when the number of employees goes into tens of thousands, you typically lose track. And I think that's the third point. We have a great dearth of leadership in the country, and not just at a political level, even an organization level, we don't have enough leaders. We need to bring in, and you mentioned skilling, right? Leadership training has to become essential right from day one. You don't have to be born a leader. You can become a leader if you are given enough opportunities early on in your career, where you know that at some point of time you're going to be emburdened with leadership. You will start looking at everything in your life differently. You will not just be relying on getting a job and just servicing your daily needs of roti kapda makan. You would say, oh, okay, how am I going to grow in this organization fast enough so that the management gives me the onus and responsibility to become a leader, and that's where I'll make transformational change and grow this company and grow the country. I think that's the key in summary.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you, and this is more of a systemic issue rather than.
Yeah,
And what you told me has got nothing to do with tech,
of
and
course.
that's where I keep on talking about is it's just not tech. Tech is just a very small, minuscule part
Tech
of
is
it.
just an enabler, right? Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I have one last small question is,
Please.
in a developed economy like China, US, Europe, you're not Europe, the number of large companies, I'm talking of a really, really large market cap of $1 trillion. India, while it offers that kind of market opportunity, has not seen any large companies beyond the Adanis and the Reliances of the world. In the new age, we need more and more Paytms, more and more, Olas to
Yeah,
come on board and build trillion-dollar businesses.
yeah,
What is stopping anybody to reach that? And this question came to me when Nvidia became, joined the trillion-dollar club with $23 trillion of, amazing, crazy. I mean, these companies itself is 5, 7 countries GDP put together.
yeah.
And what stops India from having these kinds of companies?
I think there's one single word: innovation. If you see the big difference between what Paytm provides as a product and service, what Ola provides, what Zomato provides, versus what Nvidia provides, right? It's extremely difficult now for bulk of the chip manufacturers to catch up with Nvidia, especially their AI chip offering, right? The backend
Right.
servicing of the AI processes, right? And that's where we are lacking, right? If your product differentiation is not strong enough, you will keep fighting a lot of internal battles, because a Paytm executive can easily switch over to a phone pay and earn double income, right? So he can't retain talent. A phone
Right.
has been a Paytm has been beaten by a phone pay or a mobile pay, various payment solutions, just because the same product and service can be offered by someone else. So is true
Right.
with Zomato now. Swiggy is kind of challenging them as well. Oyo is being challenged all the time, right? So if you don't have an innovative product on day one and you're just a me too guy, you're depending on blessings and obligations of the investor, who's typically controlling how you grow. And if you don't grow according to their terms, which is profitability, you'll probably soon lose the battle sooner rather than later, right? And the entire shift from growth to profitability has become imbibed into the entire startup ecosystem so strongly. It will take a very, very long time for an organization, which is typically a growing startup, to be able to scale up to an Adani or a Ambani or a Reliance level. Just because right from day one you didn't incorporate these essentials, it's very difficult to come later on and say, no, 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 no. I realize that now, let me make an innovative product. It's going to be difficult. Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, it's an enlightening conversation with you, Ethel.
No,
And
fabulous, Devashish. Really appreciate you sparing your time. And especially, I'm really looking forward to multiple such conversations which you can have with our incubators and startup. And we at
absolutely.
GRG Gen Next are really glad to have you on board. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.